We currently live in a time where tensions are very high, not even on the whole global political scale, but also here on the US scale. It's just tensions are high and we're heading into a midterm election. So there's a lot of mudslinging back and forth. And literally right before I filmed this little beauty here dropped. And I need to share it with you. I have to share it with you.
Nothing that will create more chaos,
More
inflation, and more damage to the American economy than this. Think about it. Republicans are determined to hold the economy hostage, either given to their demands on Social Security and Medicare, which millions of Americans rely on and earned and paid for, or Republicans are going to crash the economy.
This was literally just stated by the President of the United States that the Republicans are going to crash the economy. Now, most likely you already have a knee-jerk reaction. If you're right-leaning, you're probably saying, F you don't know what you're talking about. And if you're left-leaning, you're probably like, they sure are. But that's not a good way to think about it. You should think about it as, I wonder if that statement is true or not. You should look into some information. You should do some due diligence. And I know that's crazy because it's so much easier to form an entire opinion just from headlines, but it's just not the good way to go about this, at least in my humble opinion. So luckily for all of us, I got some information, especially about what's been going on recently of, is this a true statement? What's going on? Who's crashing the economy? Is the economy going to crash? And other pertinent details. And here's what I was able to find for you. For a little bit of context, please understand we are in earnings season, as in some of the biggest companies on the planet, Microsoft, Google, Apple, McDonald's, are going to tell us how they're doing. So please, just for the little bit of framework on this conversation, understand we are in the middle of earnings season where we're hearing from these companies' leadership teams, and they're telling us what they're seeing at least over the past quarter and what they expect to play out in the next quarter. Inflation is dominating the conversation on earnings calls. Here's what execs are saying. About 2/3 of companies in the S&P 500 that reported earnings in the first 2 weeks of this season had representatives mention inflation. The environment clearly is still very inflationary with a lot of supply chain challenges across the industry. Well, that's not good. The industry, a lot of challenges, particularly supply chain, so a mismatch between supply and demand. And this is something that we've talked about, and I just want to highlight it once again. Remember that the dollar, the greenback, relative to all other fiat currencies, is ripping. This is not good because any multinational business, when they're doing business in another country, by the time they convert their revenue back to USD, there's going to be a loss because the dollar is now on a relative basis so strong. This will inherently hurt the top and bottom lines. And if you're wondering, does this add up to any noteworthy value? Individual companies are saying that that alone will cost them billions of dollars. So with the dollar ripping and inflation, yeah, obviously they're worried about where we're going in 2023. Then we have this beautiful commentary from the current Speaker of the House, Pelosi, talking about inflation. And just, hey, we got to learn. It's never a bad time to learn a bit more.
And the fact is that when I hear people talk about inflation, as I heard him there, we have to change that subject. Inflation is a global phenomenon. Yes. The EU, the European Union, the UK, the British have a higher inflation rate than we do here. It's not, the fight is not about inflation. It's about the cost of living.
We have to change the subject. The fight is not about inflation. But the people who all run the companies just said it's about inflation. Well, I don't know. Let's just remember, I'm stupid. Any starting basis of any discussion we have here, you should start with the fact that I, the guy pointing at himself, is dumb. So sometimes my hand needs to be held on such matters. So I searched inflation definition for dummies because I figured I needed to learn a little thing or two. Inflation is an increase in the level of prices of the goods and services that households buy. Isn't that what she just... Maybe I need inflation for dummies. Like maybe I just need to dummy it down one more level. Or maybe my understanding is wrong and maybe all of the C-suite executives in the entire Russell 3000 are wrong. And maybe Pelosi's right in this particular case. That's also a possibility. You know, if we're just playing the world of odds, the world of statistics, that could be a maybe a non-zero chance. I don't know. Now I'm confusing myself. We got to move on a little bit more. 63% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, including nearly half of six-figure earners, as in people making $100,000 all the way up to $999,000. Half of them, 0.5, 50%. What? And then even below that, the odds get worse, 63%. Being employed is no longer enough for everyday Americans. Wage growth has been inadequate, leaving more consumers than ever with little to nothing left over after managing monthly expenses. And we're told by the President of the United States that if the Republicans had their pick, they would crash the economy. And this is literally the current state of the economy. I don't know. Maybe I'm still missing something. Credit card debt in the U.S. hits all-time high of $930 billion, with younger Americans having the highest delinquency rate. I don't know what delinquency means or sounds like, but it doesn't sound good, but I wish I knew what it meant. U.S. credit card debt hit an all-time high of $930 billion. Debt surpassed the $870 billion peak during the 2008 financial crisis. Younger Americans 18 to 29 have a 76 higher delinquency rate than anyone else. But keep in mind, it's obviously the Republicans who will crash the economy. It's clearly them. Have no fear, though. According to the Treasury Secretary Yellen, the U.S. economy is healthy, financial system is resilient. Well, that's great news. I know a lot of you guys were probably listening to everything I just explained and maybe doing some research and DD of yourself, and maybe you came up with some negative leaning sentiment. Maybe you came up with some data points that didn't make you feel all warm and fuzzy on the inside. Well, I guess a mix between Darth Vader and Yoda here is explaining to us that the U.S. economy is healthy and the financial system is resilient, and anything you're maybe thinking about or being told that is to the contrary, well, obviously that is wrong. Now, clearly, I am saying this completely tongue-in-cheek, and I'm being absolutely facetious because the average person does know what inflation is. The average person does understand what's currently going on in the economy, at least to some degree, and there's no way that they're going to fall for it. And that's exactly why this little hot tidbit came out today, this little hot ditty. Republican gains in key states signal bad news for Democrats ahead of the midterms. Republican candidates appear to be making gains in the final sprint to the November midterms. It's classic. The political pendulum goes back and forth. Basically, the pendulum goes one way, people live that way for a bit, and they're like, hey, I'm not happy with it, time to go back. And forever and ever, the political pendulum swings back and forth. So right now, we're on the Democratic side. They have the power. People aren't too happy with the financial situation of the world. And they're like, okay, basically, it's time to switch things up. And we've been talking so much about math and stats that I have the exact odds for you. Republicans have a 2 in 3 chance of winning Senate in midterm elections, which is coming up in early November. Vote. If you're Republicans and you want this to come true, vote for them. If you hate Republicans and you want it to go the other way, still register to vote. Your vote counts. Vote whatever you think is the appropriate choice. And just to get a little bit more into it, this is how the trend has been recently. The Republicans' lead is a very new phenomena, basically happened October 16th, October 17th, but ever since then has getting larger and larger and larger, which is exactly what the Democrats don't want to see as we're almost about to hit the election, which I believe is next week or in a week and a half. But regardless, for quite a while, the Democrats had the lead. Yes, they were trending downward, but recently they were kind of the same, and now the Republicans have been taking the lead. It could be because of various issues going on. If I had to throw out my assumption, it's really economic related, financially related. People all of a sudden feeling that burden of the financial pressure and noticing that more money is going out than it's coming in. And they're like, hey, I don't want that to happen. But with all that being said, obviously, I would love to get your thoughts.